reflect on his life and legacy, I'm joined by political analyst Ongama Mtimka. Ongama, welcome to Newsfeed PM. We are talking about the life and times of Chris Hani. We saw that today the Tripartite Alliance held a commemoration for the stalwart. What do you think would have been Chris Hani's opinion of the Tripartite Alliance today?
Good afternoon to you and your viewers. Thank you for having me this afternoon. So it's an interesting one. When we think of Chris Hani, we think of somebody who's become, whose life and legacy is used a lot in, as a bar in the revolutionary conscience of the liberation movement and the alliance. And he's, to the extent that he's somebody whom, when the assessment of post-democratic South African life is made, questions get asked, what would Chris Hani do? Indeed, Chris Hani, one of the key qualities as a leader that I would like to take from him is, one, the fiery, a spirit of revolution that was coupled with a great sense of pragmatism and ability to adapt depending on the conditions which were faced at the time. At the time of the transition, Chris Hani, was managing or negotiating personally the practical implications of going through a negotiated settlement and the reality that brought, even as he, caused ructions when he said a seizure of power was not without, it was not completely not an option. But also he was going around campaigning for peace. And I cite that before I answer your question, because the false impression has been created, especially by the woke generation that is revising history, to create the impression that Hani was a one-dimensional person who was fully persuaded into one approach to resolving our, impasse leading to democracy in South Africa, and that approach was just war, and that's very much false. So my view is that looking at the situation of the alliance today, Chris Hani would have the consistency of being a leader that pushes, perhaps, for a greater revolutionary conscience, greater commitment to the ideals of the revolution, while at the same time he himself would appreciate the trappings of, the limitations that the party as well as its alliance has faced in the democratic period. I feel, my view is that that balance between what is needed from a revolutionary point of view or rapid change perspective, and the practical implications of navigating all the complexities that the movement faces, would be reflected also in his political outlook and disposition.
Ongama, we listened earlier on as his wife gave an address on behalf of the family, and she mentions that it's very disappointing that 28 years on, there are still young people that are not learning in a classroom that is covering their heads. Obviously, speaking to democracy and what the ruling party has attained in the last 28 years, one might say that it's too short a time for us to have certain expectations. But again, referring to Chris Hani and as this God that we look up to in terms of what would he have done, what would have been his opinions with regards to how far we've come as a democratic country.
So the two things there, legacies of apartheid in the education system are very much evident. However, 27 years is a significant time in order to actually make the right changes that were necessary. However, part of the problem that South Africa has faced is the ability to allow leadership from the bottom to actually influence the systemic. What we have done, what particularly the ANC has done through its cadre deployment, it allowed party loyalty to trump performance and excellence when it came to leading in the public sector, to such an extent that performance in the public sector in leadership has become secondary to the most important way in order to remain in power, which means continue to remain in a bloc within the ANC that is powerful. Now, that's where our problems have been, in my view, is that we didn't allow, like it has happened in China, where people, based on merit alone, rise and succeed in lower levels of leadership. And because of that success, rise to higher echelons of power. We have created a situation in which the dominant party allowed the creation of power blocks within it to be the determinant for success in the public service, and success not being doing what is required. However, success being, one, creating a network of support and patronage, and two, sustaining that network, such that those who succeeded as excellent administrators without belonging to a powerful network were casualties of powerful networks that were not necessarily successful at the level of government. So I wanted to state that what we need and have lacked maybe and have been deprived of with Chris Hani not being there, holding other influences constant even on himself, is that voice of critique that would emphasize the building of institutions that are capable of delivering what people want, rather than building of political networks to sustain people despite whether or not they are performing in the civil service.
Thank you, Ongama. We are going to have to leave it there. That was political analyst Ongama Mtimka giving us an account of the 29 years that we are commemorating Chris Hani and what his outlook would have been had he continued to live and lead us today. Now,